God wants to heal you, body, soul, and spirit. Beloved, today I want to begin with a declaration. Heaven has already made provision for your wholeness. You were not created to live broken, defeated, or bound by the limitations of sickness, fear, or despair. From the very beginning, God's design was perfect health, peace, and joy, spirit, soul, and body. And the good news is this: what He designed, He still desires for you today. Healing is not a distant dream. It is not reserved for the strong, the worthy, or the perfect. Healing is the Father's gift to His children. And just as a loving parent would never withhold what is good, your Father in heaven does not withhold His goodness from you. God's design is wholeness. From the very beginning of creation, everything He made carried the stamp of perfection. The world was formed with harmony, balance, and beauty. Humanity was placed in the center of it all, not to struggle under the weight of brokenness, but to thrive in the fullness of God's goodness. When He breathed life into mankind, He breathed not just existence, but a divine intention that every part of life would reflect His glory and abundance. When we speak of wholeness, it is not merely the absence of sickness or pain. It is the completeness of being who you were created to be. Wholeness in the body means strength, energy, and health to carry out the calling on your life. Wholeness in the soul means peace of mind, joy of heart, and freedom from the chains of fear, guilt, and shame. Wholeness in the spirit means living in unbroken fellowship with the One who formed you, walking daily in His presence, and carrying His light into the world. It has never been God's intention that you live fragmented or divided within yourself. The fractures we feel, whether in our health, our emotions, or our spiritual walk, are not part of His design. They are the result of a broken world that has drifted far from His original plan. Yet even in the midst of this brokenness, His desire has never changed. He longs to restore, to bring back what was lost, and to realign us with the harmony we were created for. Consider how the Scriptures portray healing and restoration. Time after time, when people came to God in their need, He met them with compassion. He healed the sick, restored the outcasts, gave sight to the blind, and peace to the tormented. These moments were not exceptions or rare occurrences. They revealed His heart. They were demonstrations of what His kingdom looks like when it touches earth. His design has always been that His children live whole, and He proves it again and again through His works. To live in wholeness is to live as a testimony of God's character. Your life becomes a mirror of His goodness when it radiates health, joy, and peace. Others begin to see in you a picture of what is possible when heaven's reality breaks into human existence. Wholeness is not selfish. It is the overflow of God's abundance within you that touches everyone around you. When your life is healed and aligned, you carry a presence that brings hope and encouragement to others. We must also understand that wholeness is not just for the future, not something waiting in eternity. It is for the present moment. It is not reserved for another age, but it is available now because God's design does not change. His heart today is the same as it was in the garden, the same as it was when He walked among people, healing and restoring. Wholeness is meant to be our daily reality, not just an occasional blessing. This design for wholeness means that every part of your being is connected. If one area is fractured, the others are affected. A weary soul weighs on the body. A sick body can burden the spirit. A distant spirit leaves the mind unsettled. God's plan of wholeness addresses all three together, restoring balance and life to the entire person. That is why He does not stop at healing bodies, but also restores emotions, renews minds, and revives spirits. Wholeness also means freedom from the lies that tell us we must accept brokenness as normal. Too many have embraced the idea that weakness, sickness, or emotional pain is their permanent identity. But this is not the truth of God's design. He never destined His children to live bound by what the world calls inevitable. His truth speaks louder, declaring that we were made for life, strength, and restoration in every area. When we step into God's design for wholeness, we are not just beneficiaries, we are participants. Our agreement with His truth allows that wholeness to manifest. Every time we choose faith over fear, hope over despair, peace over anxiety, we are aligning with the design He established. This is not striving in our own strength, but opening ourselves to the life that flows directly from Him. His design is unchanging, but it becomes our reality when we embrace it fully. The beauty of God's design for wholeness is that it does not diminish with time, with circumstances, or with human weakness. It is eternal, unshakable, and rooted in His nature. To recognize this design is to recognize that every moment of healing, every touch of peace, every glimpse of joy is a reflection of His original plan for humanity. He has always wanted his children whole, and that desire remains as strong today as it was in the very beginning. Healing is a gift, not earned. From the foundation of creation, God has always revealed himself as a giver. Every breath you take, every sunrise that meets your eyes, and every heartbeat within you is evidence of his generosity. If he gives life freely, how much more will he give restoration to that life when it has been touched by pain or brokenness? Healing flows from his nature, not from our ability to achieve it, and that is why it must always be understood as a gift. The moment we believe that healing must be earned, we place it in the category of wages. Wages come by performance, but gifts come by grace. God never called his children to strive for what he has already placed within their reach. Healing is not a reward for good behavior, nor is it a prize for those who have managed to be perfect. It is a manifestation of his love, offered freely to anyone who will receive. When we look at the lives of those who were touched by divine healing in Scripture, we see no indication that they had to qualify by their works. The lame, the blind, the broken, and even those considered unworthy by society were embraced by mercy. Their healing was not dependent on their record, but on the compassion of the one who restored them. This pattern repeats itself as a reminder that healing is not an achievement, it is grace in action. Many people live under the weight of self-condemnation, believing their failures disqualify them from experiencing God's restoration. They carry guilt like a heavy chain, convinced that their mistakes make them unworthy of wholeness. Yet, if healing were based on worthiness, none of us would ever receive it. The truth is that grace moves beyond merit. Grace looks past weakness and reaches into brokenness with love that cannot be earned or deserved. Healing as a gift also removes the pressure of striving. When we realize that it is not about proving ourselves, we are set free from the exhausting cycle of trying harder. The only requirement is to open our hearts in faith, trusting that God is who he says he is. This trust is not a work, it is a posture of surrender where we release our grip on self-effort and rest in his provision. This truth also dismantles comparison. Too often, people measure their lives against others, wondering why someone else seems to experience healing while they struggle. But healing is not about competition. It is not given to the best or the most faithful. It is given out of the Father's heart without favoritism. To view it as a gift is to remove the burden of comparison and embrace the reality that what he offers to one, he offers to all. The beauty of healing as a gift is that it magnifies the giver. When we can take no credit for it, all the glory belongs to God. Our testimonies become stories of grace, not achievements. They point not to human effort, but to divine compassion. Each time healing is received, it is a reminder that God's kindness far outweighs our limitations. His goodness becomes the focus, drawing hearts back to the source of every gift. This perspective also deepens gratitude. When something is earned, we may feel entitled to it, but when it is received as a gift, it stirs humility and thankfulness. Gratitude becomes the language of those who understand healing as grace. And gratitude has a way of multiplying faith, opening the heart to receive even more of what God longs to pour out. In this way, seeing healing as a gift doesn't just restore the body or soul, it reshapes the heart to live in constant awe of his generosity. The gift of healing is also an expression of relationship. A father gives to his children not because they have met a standard, but because they belong to him. Belonging is the basis of receiving. In the same way, healing is an overflow of God's covenant love with his people. It is not about deserving. It is about being his. To accept healing as a gift is to embrace identity as a child who is deeply loved and always cared for. Every time healing comes, it is an invitation to trust more deeply in the heart of the giver. It reminds us that we do not live by earning, but by receiving. And in that receiving, we discover again and again that his generosity has no limits, his grace has no end, and his love cannot be measured by human standards. Healing remains a gift, freely offered, flowing out of the endless abundance of his goodness. Resurrection power lives in you. The same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead was not left in the tomb, nor was it confined to the heavens. That power was released into the lives of those who believe, not as a distant concept, but as a present reality. It is not a weaker version, not a diluted portion, but the very same Spirit with the very same authority that shattered death itself. To say resurrection power lives in you is to declare that nothing in your life is beyond redemption, restoration, or renewal. This power is not passive, it is active and alive. It pulses through the believer like a river of life, continually working to bring dead things back to life. Where there is despair, it births hope. Where there is sickness, it brings health. Where there is bondage, it brings freedom. Resurrection power does not simply patch up what is broken. It creates newness where there was once ruin. It is creative, transformative, and unstoppable. Too often, people live unaware of what has been placed within them. They pray for power as though it is something outside of themselves, waiting to be poured down from heaven, when in reality, it is already dwelling within their very being. The Spirit of resurrection does not visit occasionally, He abides permanently. To awaken to this truth is to step into a level of authority that changes how you see every obstacle, every challenge, and every impossibility. When we consider the magnitude of resurrection, we see the ultimate victory over the greatest enemy, death. If death itself was defeated, then what remains that can stand against such power? No sickness is too strong, no darkness too deep, no chain too heavy. Resurrection is the highest demonstration of divine authority, and that authority now resides within those who carry the Spirit. To recognize this is to walk with the confidence that nothing has the final say except the one who conquered the grave. Resurrection power also speaks to restoration of what has been lost. Dreams that have died, hope that has faded, and joy that has been stolen are not gone forever. The Spirit within you specializes in breathing life into the lifeless. He calls forth what seems buried and forgotten, making it vibrant again. What others declare finished, He calls the beginning. The presence of resurrection within you means that no situation is beyond the reach of renewal. This power is not only personal, it is also meant to flow outward. When resurrection life is active in you, it overflows into the world around you. Your words carry life, your prayers carry authority, and your presence carries hope. You become a vessel through which dead situations are transformed, not because of your strength, but because of the Spirit dwelling in you. The same way resurrection shook the earth, it continues to shake atmospheres through those who believe. Living with resurrection power inside means living without fear of defeat. Fear thrives where people forget who lives within them. But when you remember that resurrection life abides in you, fear loses its grip. The worst that life can bring cannot overpower the best that God has placed within you. That knowledge breeds courage, boldness, and resilience that cannot be shaken by circumstances. Resurrection power also reshapes identity. You are no longer a victim of your past, your failures, or your weaknesses. You are not defined by what was lost or by what has been broken. Instead, you are defined by the life-giving Spirit within you. Identity is transformed from weakness to strength, from brokenness to wholeness, from death to life. To live with resurrection power is to live with a renewed sense of who you truly are. It also changes how you see the future. Instead of expecting decline, you begin to anticipate restoration. Instead of bracing for defeat, you look forward to victory. Resurrection power instills hope that is unshakable because it is not based on circumstances, but on the eternal truth of God's Spirit. Hope becomes the anchor of the soul, steady and strong, because resurrection has already proven that life always triumphs over death. Every day is an invitation to live out of this reality. Resurrection power is not reserved for extraordinary moments. It is for daily living. It is the power to overcome temptation, to endure trials, to love beyond human capacity, and to bring life wherever you go. The Spirit within you is not dormant. He is alive, active, and ready to release resurrection in every area of your life. Faith opens the door. It is the bridge between what God has promised and what we experience in our lives. Without faith, truth remains distant, like a treasure hidden just beyond reach. But when faith is present, that truth becomes reality, transforming circumstances and rewriting stories. Faith is not a vague wish or blind hope. It is a confident trust in the character of God, a certainty that what He has spoken is unshakably true. Faith is the posture of the heart that says yes to heaven's declaration. It does not deny the existence of challenges, but it refuses to let those challenges have the final word. When the body aches, faith declares healing. When the mind wrestles with fear, faith proclaims peace. When circumstances scream defeat, faith whispers victory. It is the key that unlocks what God has already made available. This door of faith is not opened by striving, but by surrender. Faith is not the effort of trying harder to believe. It is the rest of leaning fully on who God is. It is choosing to let His word carry more weight than what our eyes see or what our emotions feel. In this way, faith becomes less about our ability and more about His reliability. The door swings open not because we push harder, but because we trust deeper. Faith also requires alignment. It is not enough to agree in thought while living in contradiction through action. True faith aligns speech, choices, and perspective with God's truth. It looks like speaking life instead of death, walking forward when fear says to stop, and praising in the middle of the storm. Each act of alignment is like turning the key in the lock, opening wider the door through which God's promises flow. Faith is powerful not because of the person who carries it, but because of the one it is placed in. Even the smallest seed of faith, when rooted in God, carries the ability to move mountains. This means no one is disqualified from living a life of faith. You do not need to possess giant faith. You need to direct your trust toward a giant God. The size of the faith is not the issue. It is the strength of the one it clings to. When faith opens the door, it changes perspective. Problems that once looked overwhelming shrink in the light of God's greatness. Fear that once paralyzed loses its hold. Doubt that once clouded the mind gives way to clarity. Faith is the lens that allows us to see reality through heaven's eyes, and in doing so, it opens the way for heaven's reality to break into earth's circumstances. Faith is often tested in the waiting. The door may not swing wide the moment we knock, but persistence in faith proves that trust is genuine. Waiting does not weaken true faith, it strengthens it. In the delay, faith digs deeper roots, learning to hold firm regardless of what is seen. And when the breakthrough finally comes, it carries with it a testimony that faith not only opened the door, but kept it open until the promise walked through. Faith is also contagious. When one person chooses to believe and receives what God has promised, it stirs faith in others to do the same. A single testimony of healing can ignite belief in those who once doubted. A story of provision can inspire others to trust for their own needs. Faith opens the door not just for the individual, but for communities, families, and generations who are watching. Living with faith as the key means living with expectation. Each day is no longer ordinary, but filled with possibility. The believer who walks by faith sees every challenge as an opportunity for God to reveal His goodness. Faith removes the limitations of human effort and replaces them with the limitless supply of divine provision. With faith, the door is never closed. It is always ready to open wider, allowing more of God's reality to break in. Every step of faith builds momentum. The more we trust, the more we see His faithfulness, and the more our faith grows. It becomes a cycle of belief and fulfillment, of trust and testimony. Faith keeps us moving forward when everything around us says to turn back. It keeps the door open when circumstances try to slam it shut. It is the simple, powerful key that unlocks the fullness of what has already been prepared. Choose fullness over survival. Too many settle for merely getting through life, holding on by a thread and calling it living. Survival says, just make it through the day, but fullness says, live in abundance. Survival is about maintaining existence, but fullness is about thriving in the destiny God designed. To choose fullness is to reject the lie that life is only about enduring and to embrace the truth that you were created to overflow with joy, peace, and purpose. Survival focuses on lack, always measuring what is missing, what is broken, or what is scarce. It teaches you to conserve, to hold back, to live in fear of running out. But fullness shifts the perspective to abundance, reminding you that heaven's resources never run dry. When you choose fullness, you no longer approach life with a mindset of scarcity, but with the confidence that everything you need has already been supplied. The trap of survival is that it keeps people small. It convinces them to stay in cycles of mediocrity, never reaching beyond the bare minimum. But fullness breaks limitations. It lifts your eyes from the ground and calls you to walk in the wide, open spaces of freedom. Fullness refuses to let you settle in the valley when you were designed to climb mountains and see horizons you never thought possible. Choosing fullness means choosing healing over pain. Survival says, learn to live with it. But fullness declares, you were made to be whole. Survival adjusts to brokenness, while fullness restores what was lost. It does not simply accept the wounds of the past, it transforms them into testimonies of redemption. The choice for fullness is the choice to no longer let pain define your story. Fullness also redefines identity. Survival identifies you by your scars, your failures, and your struggles. It labels you according to what you've been through. But fullness calls you by your true name, child, beloved, chosen. It speaks destiny instead of defeat. It reminds you that you are not what you've endured. You are who you were created to be. Survival binds people to their past, but fullness launches them into their future. In relationships, survival says, keep distance to protect yourself, while fullness says, love freely and forgive deeply. Survival isolates, afraid of being hurt again, but fullness restores connection and brings healing to broken bonds. It allows you to give without fear, to receive without suspicion, and to experience the richness of community that was always intended for you. Fullness brings energy and vision to life. Survival drains strength, keeping you focused only on the next small step. But fullness fills you with purpose, with dreams that stretch beyond your present circumstances. It gives clarity to why you are here and courage to pursue it. Survival only looks at today's struggles, but fullness embraces tomorrow's possibilities. The choice for fullness also transforms how you face challenges. Survival says, "This is too much, I can't go on." Fullness says, "This obstacle is an opportunity for growth and victory." The same trial that crushes a survival mindset becomes fuel for those living in fullness. They see resistance not as a reason to quit, but as a chance to prove the strength of the one who lives within them. Fullness is not about external possessions or circumstances. It is about an internal reality. You can have little by the world's standards and still live in fullness because joy, peace, and love overflow from within you. Survival is empty even in abundance, but fullness is satisfied even in simplicity. It is not about what you have, but about who you are becoming in alignment with the life you were created for. Every day presents the choice between survival and fullness. Each thought, each action, each response leans toward one or the other. Choosing fullness requires faith, courage, and trust, but it leads to a life that reflects the abundance of heaven. To live in fullness is to live beyond limits, beyond fear, beyond scarcity, and to embrace the reality of being completely restored in body, soul, and spirit.